Hi, welcome to this lecture on environmental adaptation of animals. Now, on the second series of oxygen and carbon dioxide physiology, we are now discussing more on the respiration. And let's start on the overview of the respiration, or at least we will start with the tuna. Okay, so far we have learned previously that this tuna was very athletic. It was high metabolic rate, meaning that it has high oxygen consumption. This means that, okay, it needs a lot of oxygen from the surrounding water, but the problem is that there's only minimal amount of oxygen available in the water because the oxygen has low solubility in the water. And moreover, because this animal lives in seawater, the solubility of oxygen is even lower in the seawater, and it's actually lower in the seawater than in the animal itself. And to face this challenge, this tuna has modulated the gills. So it has 8 times larger surface area in the gills, and the distance of diffusion from the seawater to circulation is only 1/10 to compare the regular fish. And still, this animal must swim all the time to have perfusion of gills by this water, because it swims mouth open all the time to get enough oxygen for its muscles and other activities. And otherwise, if it's not swimming all the time, it will just die. So this respiration can be quite difficult to be when you are athletic and living in area where there is not so much oxygen available. Okay, let's focus first on the gas exchange and external respiration. We have so far understood that, okay, we have from the environment, we have diffusion of oxygen and carbon dioxide to the circulation or internal body fluids. And between them, there is an isolating layer or gas exchange membrane. This membrane is not the same as cell membrane. It's actually a layer of cells. They are thin cells, epithelial cells, and there's only 1 or 2 cells that is separating the external medium from the internal body fluids. But anyway, there is some gap between them. And if you have larger gap, then this diffusion is not working anymore. And this diffusion of gas happens to lower chemical potential, meaning the lower partial pressure. So if you have oxygen, there can be either convection or diffusion of oxygen in the environmental medium, then through this membrane and inside the internal body fluids. If there is circulation, there is convection. Otherwise, the animal is so small, so it can rely on the diffusion. But also in the carbon dioxide, if there is a circulation, there is convection. But then in the lungs or the gills, there is either diffusion, or in the gills, in aquatic animals, there is sometimes they are having active transport of carbon dioxide metabolites through this membrane. And then in the environment, there is convection or diffusion again. And you can boost it by increasing this area. So if there is the larger area of this gas exchange membrane, then there is more space that can be used for this diffusion. Or if you have thinner membrane, so if you don't have any more 2 epithelial cells, you have only 1, then that means that, okay, there's a smaller space that must be traveled with diffusion, so that makes it much faster. And when we are discussing on the respiration, on the external respiration in these following videos, we're covering now only on the left-hand side. Okay. Almost all animals have a breathing organ. There is one specific organ for respiration and breathing. And there can be some additional organs, like the frogs have skin that is permeable for oxygen and carbon dioxide, and then some fish are also using the stomach to increase this gas exchange, or the sea stars are breathing with the tube feet, but these are exceptions. The general rule is that, okay, you are using mainly one single organ. And the idea is that, okay, you can increase the area for the breathing, either by increasing it inside or outside. And in case of lungs, we are increasing the area inside. So it's invaginated in the body, and the content of this breathing organ is the environmental medium. But then you can have it outside, in the chills. You can have either external chills that are evacuated from the body, or you can have internal chills that are still evacuated, but they are protected by other tissues into the superficial body cavity. But anyway, the idea in both cases is that, okay, you are increasing the area of this gas exchange. And this ventilation can happen either active, when we are breathing, we are using the muscle, or it can be passive, like the tunas where we're swimming mouth open. So there's a constant flow. And in the previous videos, we were already discussing that, okay, we have unidirectional flow. So the water is flowing one direction in the gills, or we have tidal flow, meaning that, okay, it's going inside the lungs and then out from the lungs, etc. And in some cases, animals are relying that, okay, they're not having constant flow in one direction, or that this kind of tidal space like the lungs, but they are having just the gills there. So there's all the time a small flow of, for example, water around them, and so they rely that, okay, there will anyway be some oxygen-containing water available for the gills, so it's non-directional. Okay, how the active ventilation works? Well, it can be quite easily calculated that, okay, how good we are to uptake the oxygen from the environment. We can just measure that, okay, what is the flow of water or air, and then when we are inhalated or inspired, how much oxygen was there and how much oxygen is that when we are exhalating. Or if we have a fish, we can measure the oxygen amount of oxygen in the water that is going inside the animal, and then when it's coming out from the other part of the gills, other side of the gills. So it can be easily calculated that, okay, how much oxygen is uptaken. Or this can be expressed as oxygen extraction efficiency by putting it in different way. Just, okay, measuring the difference that, okay, how much you have taken oxygen in your body or absorbed in the circulation versus how much oxygen was there in the surrounding. And in the typical fish, this ratio is about 30%. But in these athletic tunas, because they have these modulated gills, they have maybe 50 or 60% they can use or uptake in the circulation, even 60% of the oxygen available, but never 100%. Then the problem in the tidal ventilation in the lungs is that this gas exchange in the lungs is never complete. We will discuss a little bit later on the structure of the lungs and how it works, but there is always some air in the lungs, so we can't change it all. So that's why if we have oxygen in the environment, maybe 60% of that is there in the lungs, in the alveoli. So if the partial pressure of the oxygen was 0.2 in the environment, so it's a little bit more than 0.1 in the lungs. And when it's there near the blood, only part of that will be transported by diffusion, because there must be always the gradient of this oxygen partial pressure. But actually that's very nominal. So it's the blood in the circulation, the partial pressure of the oxygen is quite near the same as in the alveoli. So we are quite good in taking the oxygen from the lungs. But anyway, because this tidal gas exchange is not incomplete, so that's why in the blood we can have maybe 50% of the partial pressure of oxygen that exists there in the environment. Okay, how we can enhance this respiration? Let's first focus on the unidirectional gas exchange, because in that there are several nice examples. So when we have gas that is flowing in one direction and we have a blood that is flowing on one direction, they can be in the same direction or in the opposite direction. So if we have a co-current gas exchange, it works in the same principle as heat exchange we had in the previous weeks of the videos. So when the flux is moving, or the flux of the gas and the blood is going in the same direction, if we assume that in the beginning of, for example, chill, there is no oxygen available at all, then there is a flow of oxygen from the medium to the blood. So, meaning that, okay, depending on how long time they will be near each other, then this partial pressure gradient is decreasing until it's pretty much the same. And that's why with this kind of mechanism, we can only take maybe 50% of the partial pressure of the environment. And never we can have more blood or oxygen in the blood than is exhalated or exhaled medium. So it's always, it can be the same, but never more. But as well as in the heat transport, we were having that, okay, we can have colder feeds because the blood that is going in the leg is heating up the blood that is coming out. So we can have this countercurrent boost. So now this heat exchange of the flux or of gases can be boosted if they are going in different directions. So now this difference in this partial pressure of oxygen is smaller, meaning that the flux is smaller, but it lasts for a long time. So because now the blood is going in one direction and the medium is going in opposite direction, that's why even although the medium has only 25% left of oxygen, there's still flow to the blood. And the good point is that now, in that case, we can have higher blood partial pressure of oxygen in the blood than in the water that is going through the gills. Okay, but still we have one more. We have cross-current boost. So if you are crossing the blood vessel with a medium that is going in one direction, there's a large gradient of partial pressure of oxygen, but it's also only for a short period. But if you have more vessels, you have more branches in the circulation, so you can have step by step still take some oxygen from the medium. And then finally, when you are collecting the circulation branches, then the pressure of oxygen in the circulation is higher than in the excited medium. Okay, are these just models, or are they having some consequences in the real life? Well, in the mammalian lung we have this pool. So this gas exchange works like a little bit like unidirectional model. So it approaches the same partial pressure in the artery and in the exudate. But then in these fistulas we have the countercurrent. So that's why the arterial partial pressure of oxygen is higher than in this expired medium. And this is very good because in aquatic environment, because there's not so huge amount of oxygen available. And this cross current is used by these bird lungs. So even in this cross current, you can have actually more partial pressure of oxygen in the circulation, but quite often that is not used. So, because in the terrestrial animals, in the air we have so huge amount of oxygen available, so they don't need this. Okay, so far we have discussed on the oxygen, but what about then the carbon dioxide? Because even that's even more important. In the aquatic environments, the partial pressure of carbon dioxide is in the equilibrium. So you have as much carbon dioxide in the blood as in the environment, in the partial pressure. So it's at 0.3 kilopascals. But in the air breathers, the partial pressure of carbon dioxide is much higher. So in our blood, we have maybe 4 or 5 kilopascals, whereas in the environment we have 0.4. So there's a huge change when the animals were used to terrestrial life, that okay, they must have high amount of carbon dioxide in their circulation. And this causes that these air breathers have much higher carbon dioxide amount versus the oxygen, partial pressure of oxygen in their circulation. Thank you.